My name's Julia Spicer. I am the chair of Gen Australia, the not-for-profit organisation that was established to be part of this organisation. My background with Global Entrepreneurship Congress started last year when I went to the GEC in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia and got to experience all that the Gen Global community brings together. I'm involved with some businesses that I created in southwest Queensland, and I have a role at the moment with the Queensland government as chief entrepreneur. So ambassador, cheerleader, rascal of all things innovation across Queensland is probably the best way to describe that. I am here with my friend Vu Tran from Go1, and I'm going to get Vu to introduce himself in a minute. But can I just ask people to show of hands, who in the room runs their own startup or business?
Awesome.
Who in the room's heard of Go1 before?
Oh, wow.
Ooh, few that haven't. Who? Yeah, it's great. Who is not from Australia? How many overseas peeps have we got? Great. Who considers New Zealand not part? Just joking. What other intro questions do we want to ask people before we kick off?
Who's ready to kick off?
Who's ready to kick off? We all are. So, hello, Vu.
How you doing?
How are you?
Very well, thank you.
That's good. Now, I know you, and I know a bit of the Go1 story, but before we kick into some conversations, can you maybe do a bit of an overview who you are as a person and some of your family background,
Yep.
But also the Go1 story and how you've ended up being able to sit here with me this afternoon.
And I'll do that as quickly as I can because I know we're meant to be having a fireside chat and doing some Q&A. So hello everyone, my name's Vu. I'm one of the co-founders of Go1. We're a proudly Queensland founded and headquartered company in the great city of Logan, which is in southeast Queensland. I always start off by telling people I've got the best job in the world. Why? Because I run Go1 with my best mates. Andrew's our CEO, he's my best mate. We started our business together when we were 17. I'm 34 this year, so I've spent half my life, the entirety of my adult life, if you want to call me an adult, building a business with my friends from high school. Chris Agland, who is also one of the co-founders, he's a co-CEO. He was in the year below us at high school, and Chris Hood joined us a little bit later. So Go1 as it is today has been around for about 8 years. We've got just under 1,000 staff across 22 countries globally. People refer to it as a unicorn. It's got about a $3.5 billion AUD valuation. And what we are is, think of us as the Spotify or Netflix for workplace learning. What we do is we aggregate training and learning from providers all over the world into one place, and we make it available under a single subscription to businesses all over the world. So we're a B2B SaaS company, if you want to put it that way. We're a subscription aggregator of content, and what we do is we provide training to people in the workforce. So that can be everything from compliance through professional development training. My background personally, all of us went to uni. All of us have completely different backgrounds. Andrew's an economist. He's a Rhodes Scholar. He went to Oxford. I remember he called me up in uni. He said, I got a Rhodes Scholarship. I said, awesome. Had to Google what that was. Realised he had to go to Oxford. So if you wonder why Go1 has a UK office, that is why. Chris Agland, his background, he went to Griffith University. His background is as a lawyer. He has a really big sort of social justice background. During the earthquake in Haiti, when we were in university, he founded something called the School Bag Program, sent 10,000 school bags across to Haiti, and actually lived there for a year during the recovery. Chris Hood went to a completely different university as well. His background is as an engineer, went to QUT. I'm biased. He's probably one of the best engineers Queensland's ever produced. And my background is completely different. I'm a medical doctor. I'm a general practitioner, or what you call a family physician. I still practice and see patients in Logan. I'm a father of 2 children, so I'm pretty busy. But I really love what I get to do because I get to work with great people. Between the 4 of us, it's like a bad joke, An engineer, a lawyer, a doctor get together. An engineer, a lawyer, an economist, and a doctor get together and start an education technology company. But what really drives us is a love of learning. Curiosity, the desire to want to know more and learn more. And if you look at where sort of the whole world, wherever you are in the world, where investment into education occurs, it usually occurs in the first 25 years of our lives, right? K-12, university or tertiary education, if you do go get a tertiary education, but then it pretty much just falls off the cliff in terms of investment into education post the age of 25. So for us, where we really focus on is where we all know we've learnt the most, whether it be myself as a doctor or any of you in terms of what you've learnt. It's not your degree or your qualification. It was actually being in the workforce or on the job. And so we see the opportunity, and where we saw the opportunity 8 years ago when we turned Go1 into what it is today, is focusing on that group of people, that idea of helping upskill and deliver training to people in the workforce. Because for myself as a doctor, I graduated at 21, 22, which is scary to think there's 21-year-old doctors sitting there in EDs somewhere, which I was. And so for the next 40-something years of my life, that was actually where I was going to learn skills and actually learn how to be a doctor. University set me up for that, but really it was on the job and learning on the job. And I think many of you here today will tell me that where you've learnt the most is actually on the job and actually being able to apply things practically. So in a nutshell, that is Go One, and that's kind of my background and where we've come. My last name's Tran, so obviously I'm of Vietnamese heritage. My parents were Vietnamese refugees, and because we're talking about entrepreneurship, my parents being migrants and refugees to Australia, I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. My parents have always owned a small business of some sort, a shop or something like that, a convenience store. If you've ever met Vietnamese migrants of my parents' generation, you'll see that they own a convenience store or a news agency or a bakery or a restaurant, something like that. Because I've got a firm belief that migrants are actually entrepreneurs at heart. They're risk takers. They're the people who are willing to take the risk to leave the country of origin of wherever they came from. And as a result of that, they have this tendency towards running a business.
I love the way in which you describe the journey that you guys all went on to be able to create the business that you've got, and we might be able to touch on some of the other ways in which you've been able to still stick together and do that. The topic for this for our fireside was around this global thinking for startup growth. And so, we hear this term around, think global, act local, all of that kind of thing with some of the different initiatives. But talk to me, you mentioned 22 countries that you're in. How do you run a global business from Logan? What are the things that you need to think about globally but still be able to deliver on, within the team? Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so what I'd always like to talk about first of all is actually how we pose questions. And sorry, I'm going to be a bit philosophical here. When we run into problems, and this is something that I've learnt through working with my co-founders, and particularly Andrew, who's our CEO, again, he's my best mate. Anytime we run into a problem, he never asks me, hey, Vu, do you think we can do this? No, and we've spoken about this before. He always says, how do we? And so as a result of that, the idea of growing a startup from Logan, which is a smaller city in Queensland. Yes, it's close to Brisbane, but it has a whole bunch of stigma associated with it. It's low socioeconomic. It's very multicultural background. But at the end of the day, our question was always, how do we do that? Not can we? So it was actually never a thought of whether we could do it, right? Therefore, as a result of that, being a Queensland company didn't really matter because we were just thinking, how do we do it from where we are? Being an Australian company didn't really matter, right? And so from that point of view, we've always had the point of, it's a problem to be solved. It's a puzzle to be solved. It's not something that's unsolvable. So for us, what do we learn? I think first things first is that wherever you are in the world, you're going to run into the same problems. And I think it didn't matter if we were located in Logan or in Queensland, or whether we were located in Mountain View or San Francisco in Silicon Valley, or New York or London or wherever else it might be, you're going to run into the same problems. You need customers, you may or may not need investors, and you need talent. And the great thing is where we were is we had talent and customers and some small investors at the time. This is well before venture capital became a thing. So we could find some investors initially. But I think there are many places all over the world where you can actually find those things. Then when it comes to so that's your sort of, think local sort of piece. And then going global, I think it's a matter of going, well, as I said before, we have staff across 22 countries globally, but our largest office is in Logan, is in Queensland. We've got about 150 people. You've been down our way before. We've found that talent, we've created that talent, we've made sure that we have access to that talent, and it's going to continue to be an issue. But it also means that we don't have to have 1,000 people in Logan. I mean, that would be ideal. But we've also gone to where the talent is as well. Logan will always be where our home is. Queensland will always be where our home is. But we've also understood that we need to be able to have, say, for example, we're in the enterprise sales space. We need to have boots in the ground in terms of our space and what we do, at least the way we view it at the moment, in the major countries in which we operate. We've got a big team in Paris, a big team in Berlin, London, New York, San Francisco, because they're our sales team and our support teams who make sure that we can service our customers well. But I guess what I'm trying to say is where our heart is in Queensland, and I don't think you need to move that. I think we've had to spread our footprint, but we haven't had to move where we were and indeed who we were.
Yeah, I really like that. I'm going to throw to see if anybody's got a question for Vu in a moment. But while we give people a chance to prep their tricky questions for you, Vu,
Go for it.
you guys have got some really clear measures of success. How you define how the business is tracking, what's working, how you want to be able to always be improving. Some people might have heard Luke Anier's fireside chat yesterday where he kind of talks about, and we've spoken with Luke before about, he kind of tries to do himself out of a job all of the time. Once he knows something, he needs to move on to something he doesn't know. Are you happy to share some of your metrics, your measures of success that you have within Go One, and how you attach others in the team to those KPIs or to those measures of success?
Yeah, I mean, we're a relatively large organisation for considering where we've come from. But what I will say to you is that, you know, the first thing is actually having the right structures in place in terms of having the right measures, metrics, and processes in place for the right size of organisation you are, or right stage of organisation you are. Very often, I talk to lots of startups at the moment. I see so many people try and have a big company mindset in a small company. And that's good in some parts and really detrimental in other parts. In the early stages, you know, our key metric was growing our company, bringing in revenue, right? Because the idea of our mission is to unlock positive potential in people through a love of learning, which I might explain a little bit later. And our vision is to be able to reach 1 billion people globally. Now, if we just started out just trying to drive towards that 1 billion people from day one, we probably wouldn't be alive today, right? So that is a great overarching metric as part of our vision, but we are not trying to sit there and go, how do we get to $1 billion, 1 billion people, right? Nor $1 billion. Our first step was actually, let's get revenue so that we can survive and sustain and achieve our vision. So in our early days, actually revenue was a key driver. It doesn't sound great. It sounds very, you know, capitalist of me to be able to say that. But at the end of the day, we are a business and we need to make money so that we can grow our business to be able to achieve our mission and vision. And we were very real about that. We would be able to say, look, you know, I remember, you know, most of you in the SaaS space will go, it's triple, triple, double, double. What does that mean? You triple revenue year on year for 2 or 3 years. So you go from 250 to 750 to, 2.5 million. And then from that, you might double. So to 2.5 million of ARR to 5 to 10 to 20, right? And that's a lot. That's really hard to triple, double. But everyone in our organization, when we're that small, knew exactly that's what we needed to do. Because to be counted as a high growth company, to be able to get the capital we needed, to be able to grow at the speed that we wanted to grow, that was just what we did. And we were very frank, like people knew where our revenue was. If you worked in our company, you knew where our revenue was and where we needed to be by the end of the year. And we were very, very open about that with our team because that's what we're trying to grow. Then as we grow further, then you can now have an idea of impact. So as an example for us, our vision is to be able to reach 1 billion people globally. We reach about 15 to 20 million people a year right now. So we are 2% along our journey. And I remind our team that. To be able to say, yeah, okay, we've got a multi-billion-dollar valuation or we've got these big teams or whatever, that's not the goal. The goal is to be able to have an impact. The goal is to achieve our mission. And we are measuring that by the number of people that we have an impact on. And so you can see there's that transition there from driving what's really important in the business to get it to survive early, which I'm being really frank on, while also still having those overarching bits of going, let's reach 1 billion people because that's what we're here on this planet to do. You know, to borrow from the Steve Jobs biography, that's how we want to make a dent in the universe. And then really being able to, over time as you grow, to be able to then focus more and more. And I think of it sort of metaphorically as a lens coming into focus, right? Initially, we're just trying to make out that shape. But as we get bigger, as we have more impact, it's then about focusing that more to be able to realize that vision. And that for me is about reaching 1 billion people globally. So to give you an idea, every 1.3 seconds, someone in the world is doing learning via Go One. It's pretty cool. But we're only reaching 20 million people. We're 2% of the way along, right? So that's got to change quite significantly. What that means is that, you know, we need to be having probably 50 people learning a second in Go One to be able to reach those sorts of numbers. So I say that to illustrate to our team that the mission is nowhere near completed. But also at the same time, we need to make sure we focus on the things that are important for our business at that stage. You know, if we were focusing on the big number at the start, 1 billion people, it's great to be able to have as a statement. But day to day, we had to measure that as
Well, it
revenue.
becomes really overwhelming, right?
Yep.
Like, it's hard to do that when day after day you've got nowhere near your billion people. That's really hard to stay motivated and
Yeah,
energized
you go from
with
150
everything.
users to 200 users, and the goal is 1 billion.
Yeah. So I think that piece around how you've been able to continue that path and stay on track, but keep that at the level and the size that you were at that time is really useful for people in the room. Do we have many other businesses in the room valued at $3 billion at the moment? No, I need to put my hand down. So I think it's really important for us to be able to see where we can also fit in that.
But I have to point out the valuation, like the valuation is something that other people give you.
Yeah.
It's not something that you give, right? And so as a result of that, what you're aiming for is impact. And one of the biggest challenges that you have, and I will share this with you, is as you grow is talent, both retaining it and attracting it. And the right talent is going to be one that buys into your mission and vision. The wrong talent is the one that buys into your valuation, right? So I look at a valuation as a vanity metric that's external, that's externally driven, and it'll go up and down or skyrocket or whatever it is based on external factors. The factors that we can control are we having a big enough impact day to day, and do people buy into the mission and vision that we have as an organisation?
Oh, I love it. Who's got a question for Vu? Down the front. Can I give you a microphone?
Hi Vu, my name's Charlie Crozier. I'm a Melbourne-born or based founder. My question was in regards to the theme of global thinking, and you touched on the priorities for your business were customers and revenue in the early days. In line with this, when did global thinking actually become global doing? And by that, when did you go, right, we've generated enough revenue in Australia, now's the time to start looking overseas? Like, was it a specific number of customers or a specific amount of revenue, or when did you say, like, right, now's the time to bite the bullet, and what was that first market?
Yeah, so I think there's probably a few things I should have added in there. So in 2015, we went through an accelerator called Y-Combinator or YC in the US. That really changed our ambition, right? I'm going to give you all a secret. If none of you have heard of Y-Combinator, it's just an accelerator. You go through a 3-month program. But the best part about it is that, you know, your alumni are people like the founders of Dropbox, Airbnb, Stripe, like some of these amazing companies that have gone through. And when you were sitting there in the program, and our cohort was smaller than it is today, it was 60 people in a program. They do a summer and a winter batch. Now there's like hundreds per batch. And you think to yourself, you know, the guys from Dropbox, Airbnb, and Stripe were sitting here in the same position as us only a few years prior. So we are just as deserving of being in this cohort or being in this accelerator as other people. And when we got in, we were like, yeah, we think we're pretty good. And then we meet everyone else, and we go, holy cows, we are crap, right? And we were crap for a whole bunch of different reasons, not just because we saw all these really impressive businesses who were our peers in the same cohort going through at the same stage of business. We also realized that their ambition was huge compared to ours, right? And if I could say that there's the one thing that I think we still need to work on in our ecosystem here in Australia is actually lifting our ambition. So the idea of going global wasn't ever a yes or no. It was a, hey, to be able to be the company to have there aren't 1 billion people in Australia, right? So we have to be global, right? So I think the first part that it comes back to is depending on the impact that you want to be able to have, is Australia big enough, or is Australia, you know, the only part of your TAM? And if it's not, then you're a global company from day one, whether you decide to sell globally or not, because you will eventually need to be global to be able to reach your vision and mission if it encompasses the whole world, or if it encompasses more than what Australia can provide. Your question more specifically as to when we decided to sell into other areas was actually when we thought we could afford it, when we thought we had the resources to do it, when we thought there was an opportunity to do it. And, you know, we went to the US 5 or 6 times and failed, right? So when was probably, you know, quite early on. But I would say to you that, you know, for me, that those trigger points are going to be different for every organization. I think it's going to be that point where you realize that the opportunity to target a US market or a global market, whatever market that might be, you got to start somewhere. I wouldn't eat the whole elephant at once. I'd choose one place. So we chose the US as an example. That trigger point for us was the point where we said, okay, we have a model that we think we could replicate and take from Australia and do that in the US. Because I think the problem is, if you try and fight a battle on 2 fronts and you haven't found that formula yet, you're going to be in a lot of pain. So for us, it was about feeling comfortable enough to say the model that we had in Australia was roughly good enough for us to then replicate in the US, whether it be just product market fit, sales motions, support motions, all those structures that you might need. Again, depending on your business and your product. That's going to be very different if it's a D2C product or something like that.
We have another question down the front, sir. I'll give you the microphone so everybody else can hear. Oh, I'm getting my steps up today.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Orotobazabe from the origin of human being, Ethiopia.
Welcome.
It's a very historical and natural tourist event exercise. I invite you to visit the beautiful Ethiopia. I was a university lecturer. Thanks to my thinking globally, this is my 5th Global Entrepreneurship Congress participation. I also visited Japan, Singapore, South Korea, America, and other countries to fulfill my dream. I have a dream of training 1 million Ethiopians so that Ethiopia will outshine the world, because its entrepreneurs will flourish any nation. And thanks to my global thinking, thanks to mindset shift, I'm here with you. Thanks God. I would have been a retiree this time. I have already finished my, please your photograph. I'm already 67. I would have been a retiree, but thanks to my dream, I will still fly all over the world. Mindset shift is what has created me, and I'm an evidence of this thought.
Thank you for joining us. So we all heard that. We're all visiting Ethiopia. You don't look a day over 65. And Vu, you've got a connection for Ethiopia.
There you go.
Other questions? Oh, I'm going to
You
go
are getting
down
your
here.
steps up.
Oh, look at me go.
Hi, Vu. Thank you so much. Veronica Mason from Sydney. You just spoke about how you went to the US a couple of times and failed, and also I can appreciate that this would have been quite a journey for you. How did you mentally handle the stress and the failures that have come up along the journey?
Oh, we fail at stuff every day. Co-founders, like I take my hat off to a solo founder, full stop, right? I started off by telling you I've got the best job in the world because I get to work with my best mates, right? We get to share all the triumphs, but also all the challenges that we run into. They're 3 of the smartest people I get to know, so I get to shift all the problems onto them. But realistically, I think the thing is, if you know, there's this really great talk about resilience that was done by a researcher from New Zealand. It's a great TED talk, and her name's completely forgotten, really passed me. But she said there's 3 factors that play into people that her research has found that are important when it comes to resilience. The first is knowing that suffering is actually human and normal. So in other words, for us as entrepreneurs, knowing that we are going to run into problems and nothing is perfect. The second that she talks about is focusing on the things you can control. So if you've read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of the things that Stephen Covey talks about is the circle of concern and circle of influence, and really focusing on those things you can control within your circle of influence. And the third factor, which is about to escape me unless I stall for long enough, I've completely forgotten as I was talking about it. But those are the 2 things that really come home for me when I think about the challenges that we run into, knowing that actually the only thing I could put money on that's going to be a certainty is we are going to run into a challenge tomorrow. And the flip side of that is knowing that we should focus on the things we can control, which is really important.
We've got one more question down the front, and then I'll see if there's another one.
Kia ora, Vu, Emily.
Give it a go.
Kia ora, I'm Emily from New Zealand. Over the last year, I've built an accelerator in New Zealand. It's called Phase 1 Ventures, which is based on Y-Combinator. And the big thing that we always talk about is what are the unscalable things you had to do to go across borders. So I really am interested in hearing from you. What are those first things you had to do that were really unscalable to get into the US market?
So you mean doing things that don't scale sort of thing? Yeah. So doing things that don't scale, it's a very YC principle. It's challenging in a capital constrained market. So just, I've got to kind of preface it with that. Easiest thing is the 6th or 7th time that we tried to do it, we got some really great advice from a guy named Stelly, who's the founder of a CRM called Close.io. And he said, you got to sell from the mothership. What did that mean? We all want to go out there and hire a great salesperson and give them the job of selling, right? So every time I meet a startup, I go, let me guess what your plan is to go to the US. You're going to go to the US, find a really great sales leader and give them the job of going out and flogging your product. And then I'll talk to you in 6 months' time and see how much money you've just torched doing that. And 9 times out of 10, I think I'm right in that circumstance because I've learned from experience 6 times out of 7. On the 7th occasion, Stelly gave us that advice. I wish he gave it to us 6 times earlier. In which case what I did was I took 2 of my really great emerging salespeople and I said, if you guys want to go to the US in 6 months' time and be part of the landing party there, let's wake up at 1 a.m. every morning and sell into the east and west coast of the US. And that's what we did. And we did that and built up a small book of customers from Queensland. We just had to wake up earlier, right? And we did that, and as a result of selling remotely and doing graveyard shifts, we built out that first book of customers, and then we went there with a landing party with people who were keen to come from Australia, come with me and build a team there. So that's the thing that didn't scale, but it was something that was really important.
We've got one last question.
One last question.
Go for
make
gold.
it quick. Hi, Frida from Melbourne. Welcome everybody to our beautiful city. Can we first thank you both for a fabulous workshop. Thank you so much for the insights.
Thank you for having us.
But just very quickly, can we go back to talent, retention and attracting the right talent and keeping them on board? Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and in terms of talent, how you've been able to keep the people that have been the captains of the business close and being able to attract new talent to the business?
Well, we haven't been able to keep them all. There are some fantastic people who have worked with us who we haven't been able to keep. And again, that's the reality of doing what we do and the profile that we get and the ability for people to come and work with Go1 means that they actually, be able to say, look, I've worked at Go1, I built this in Go1, this is what I've done over the last few years. And so naturally their ability to be able to move into different industries, different jobs and different roles is inevitable. And so I look at that going, retaining great talent is actually incredibly hard. And we know we're going to leak really good talent, and that is with my blessing. The talent that I love leaking, though, are the ones who actually go out and start their own business. They are my favourites. That's the ones where I go for it, man. I'm going to lose you. It's going to be terrible, but I love that you're starting your own business. I love that you're taking the experience you've learned from working with and for our customers and actually going out there and now doing it yourself, because I love that. I think that's one of the best measures of the impact of an entrepreneur is how many entrepreneurs can you actually help launch, right? Then the second part that it comes back to is I think, I know I'm a broken record, but it's really living and breathing that mission and vision, because that is something that better pay, better perks and all those different things cannot compete with. And so I think when you have people who truly buy into your mission and vision, you have people who will be rusted on and be there for a long time. But the flip side of it is I do want people to progress. If people are stagnating in Go1, they're still doing their job well, but they're not progressing themselves personally, and we can't help them progress, they need to move on. As much as I regret saying that, I really want to see people progress as they come through Go1. Whether that's at Go1 or externally, it doesn't matter. I want to see people who join us and join us on the journey, even if it's for a short period of time, to actually have the opportunity to take that and run with it, whatever else it is they do.
We've got 15 seconds before we hand over to Pete, so I'm going to wrap us up. Can we please give Vu a very big round of applause? There's maybe 60 people in the room and there was only 58 other questions, Vu. So I'm going to suggest that you really quickly exit so that the next group can start their session. Otherwise, we will hold the room for them. Team, Vu is an absolute legend. He's a bit like Chad and Madonna. We only use his first name now in Queensland, and now we've shared him with the rest of the world. So thank you so much, Vu, for being part of this. And if you want to talk to Vu, he'll chat with you outside. He's a very generous man, but otherwise we're going to exit so this group can start. Thanks, everybody.